Hi guys, welcome to Finish Awesome Friday. This week we discuss layer number 2, okay, our structural layer, should I say. Today we move on to the actual training side of things in the actual body. In layer 1 we discussed your mindset, okay, so just a couple of simple things from that we took, okay, taking one particular weakness at a time and working and chipping away at that until it becomes a sort of the weakness is there no more. You're building up daily habits. Those daily habits grow into something that you just do, as I say, as a habit is, and then from there you're able to eliminate that weakness, okay. And the other thing from that really is to obviously positivity, and obviously learning and understanding why you're making that change will help you build upon that change and continuously work towards that sort of mindset of that it's a positive thing that you're doing, okay. Now the second section now gets a lot more physical, because obviously the actual thing about destroying your weaknesses is not just a mental game. Obviously the mental game is the most important thing in terms of weakness training, but actually then once you start going into training and you want to start pushing your body and getting the shape and the size of the muscles and things that you want, then it becomes a massive important aspect that you're actually doing it correctly, okay. So in terms of form, okay, you should never ever obviously train a movement if you can't do it properly, without any resistance, without any intensity, okay. But there are alternatives you can do whilst you're trying to get that movement in place, okay. So it's not a case that you know if you can't squat, you can't press overhead and things like that. It's not to say you can't train, and you shouldn't train with resistance, or you shouldn't train things, but you should find alternatives or find things that work particular muscles, and then obviously then work on your mobility a bit more. You know, it should be sort of more of your priority at that stage, okay. So in terms of the points from there, so that is point number 1, okay. So when you're looking at movement, when you're looking at increasing movement, obviously what you want to do is work on the mobility, okay. Mobility is the actual range of movement that you can do within any particular joints in the body. Obviously the main areas that are going to be suffering are going to be up in the shoulders, they're going to be around the hips, and they're going to be around the ankles, okay. So the most tight areas generally, and the areas that we should be looking to mobilize the most, or 9 times out of 10, as I say with most people, will be those areas. Why is that so? Okay, most of the time, most people are sitting down, okay, your shoulders are rolled forward, okay, you're in that seated position, as we've talked about quite a lot, where you're constantly in this position here, glutes are lengthened, hip flexors are nice and tight, you're constantly in that position from there, and then what happens is you're rolled over and ready to go, okay. So that obviously is a problem. So if you then start looking to go overhead, obviously you're already finding that it's probably quite difficult to get in those positions, because your pecs are going to be very tight, or maybe your lats are quite tight as well, and they're pulling you all out of position, so you can't get those right ranges there. Because your hip flexors are tight, you won't have the mobilization to get into those proper positions. Your glutes won't be able to activate properly, because it's not something you use in a long time. So those sort of problem areas come from there. And also your ankles, okay, again, are normally a problem with people is their ankle mobility, again, because you're sitting in one position, because you're not really sort of testing that range of the ankle, you're going to have problems there. So the ankles, the hips and the shoulders are generally the main areas of mobility that you need to start looking to incorporate into your training. Now, whether that is doing a daily mobility routine, as we've discussed before, whether it's just adding in mobility exercises that you do before your training that hit those particular areas, again, that will help. But the more you can do mobility work, as we've discussed before, the more you can actually get the results that you want, okay? The main thing about movement that's different to anything else, really, is that it's something that I think has to be done, as frequently as possible, okay? If you could mobilize 3 times a day, you're going to get better results than if you just mobilize 1 time a day, and so forth and so on. But you can take it as far as you want, or as little as you want. I don't think you can overtrain mobility in that sense. You really can. If you can just do something, even if you wake up in the morning and you do a bit of shoulder mobility work and a bit of hip mobility work, just a stretch or some sort of movement that's going to last 5 to 10 minutes, hitting a couple of areas. Do that every single day. That's going to obviously benefit you much more than just trying to have these big mobility sessions once or twice a week that you can then hit the whole body with, okay? So they're your main areas you want to start looking at. There's other muscles as well. Obviously, we've talked about, the muscle groups like the hamstrings and things like that are going to be tight as well. They can all come into it, but those 3, the hips, the ankles and the shoulders, are going to be probably, as I say, and as I always say, 9 times out of 10 it's probably going to be where the majority of people are going to be struggling with in terms of their mobility. So that's what we're going to work on from there. So what are we talking about? So in terms of your shoulder, you should be able to get a full range, go all the way overhead, all the way back down. Okay, that should be something from there. You should be able to reach out to the sides and reach back without any major sort of concerns. Those are going to be sort of your main movement patterns from there. You're normally going to be pressing and pulling in a vertical and horizontal plane. Okay, so that's something that you need to ensure that you've got good reach of. Okay, so that's what you want to make sure from there. From your hips, as I say, you want to make sure you've got full extension. Okay, so when you squeeze your glutes, when you squeeze your buttocks, okay, you should get full extension and sort of be able to reach out from here. If you're leant over or it's too tight from that position, obviously when you do other activities with the lower body, you won't be able to get full extension of the body, which is obviously going to be a problem there. And you normally will then start getting hip problems because it will disperse the weight incorrectly on the joint. Okay, and in terms of ankle, okay, just a simple like step stretch. Okay, where you stand on a step and then just do like a calf raise. So you lie yourself down, it stretches in one way, and the other way obviously is then you can sit actually on your feet, have your legs out straight, and just put a bit of pressure on it and stretch them out the other way as well. So you know, the flexion and extension of the ankle from there you can start working on. Okay, so just a couple of brief ideas. But Movement Monday obviously will have more and more sort of areas working on those particular you know, movements. We'll start looking into the shoulders, into hips, and into ankles, and give you a couple of ideas and a couple of stretches you can start using in the future. Okay, so just to let you know that. They're the areas you want to start working on. Okay, so in terms of mobilization, start hitting those areas as frequently as you can so you can get into the proper ranges. Balancing muscles though, that becomes a little bit different. So as we talked about the hamstrings, obviously they're more of a muscle in themselves. Okay, so what you want to make sure is that your muscles obviously have full range of motion as well. You should be able to obviously extend and obviously flex onto the arm. The knee joint should be able to fully extend and fully retract as well. Okay, so if there's particular problems in terms of tightness with the muscles, we need to make sure that they're nice and flexible as well, nice and mobile from there. But with muscles, the most important thing is to obviously make sure that you're balanced again in all areas. That will come along and help mobility in a sense, but the one without the other is quite difficult. So you can't be mobile without having the muscles there to obviously move you into positions, and you can't get that mobility without building that muscle in the first place. So the main muscles that you want to start working on, I would say, are the main muscles that we want to look to activate within our sessions. Okay, so you're looking at upper back, okay, you're looking at glutes, and you're looking at quads. Okay, the reason that being is when you contract those particular muscles, what happens? So if you contract your upper back, what happens? You open out your shoulder girdle and your chest gets nice and sort of proud from that position. You're strengthening that position from there. So rows, okay, face pulls, anything that's going to sort of retract the shoulder blades, squeeze them together and work that upper back is going to be great for opening out those shoulders. Okay, most people, as I say, they're in like this. Okay, so you want to open out everything and get yourself in that position. So the upper back's really important to do there. Glutes, obviously, okay, getting that butt in check, okay, making sure that your booty looks good. It's important though, massively for function, okay? Every athletic endeavor is driven from those glutes. So what you want to make sure is that you're activating them and building them as much or as frequently as possible, okay? Think about it again, it's extension of the hip. If you squeeze your glutes, you can't help but fully extend at the hips. And that is what the important thing is. So if you're building that mobility in the hips and building the glutes and getting those strong and active, you're going to open up your hips, you're going to be much healthier, much stronger in those positions, and anything like squatting, deadlifting, jumping, bounding, running, all those things will be fixed by working on the glutes and building those up and making those stronger. And the last one is going to be your quads. Again, okay, if you have tight hamstrings and you sit in this flex position from there, the quads are always going to be really lengthened and really long. So what do? You take away, okay, that angle, you extend at the knee, okay, and that squeezes those quads. Okay, again, if you squeeze the quads, you get a full extension. Okay, it activates and opens out the hips around the back. Okay, and then you have full extension in the legs. So as you can see, mobility and muscle should really tie in together. When you balance one thing, the other thing will automatically start to improve. Okay, so if you work on mobility of the shoulders along with activating and strengthening and building the muscles in the upper back, your shoulders will be healthier. You'll be able to reach overhead much easier. You'll be able to do things much simpler, and it won't get pain when you're doing other pressing movements from there. Okay, or at least you shouldn't. It should be something that becomes much easier once you do that. If you activate and build the glutes, suddenly you'll be able to, as I say, do things where you're actually moving weight up and down. Squatting and deadlifting becomes much simpler to do. Picking things up off the floor, if you want to go from a functional standpoint, okay, you're opening up the hips and you're actually going against the grain of sitting down all day. Okay, so that is massively important to hit those glutes. And obviously working the quads then obviously comes into knee and ankle mobility from there as well. If you can activate your quads, activate your glutes and stand in that top upright position, obviously you'll be in much better posture and you'll feel much better. Okay, so they go hand in hand, as you can see. Okay, mobilize, activate these muscles. If you're doing that as frequently as possible, you know, practice, practice, practice. All these things take practice, and that's the most important thing to take out of it. If you can do it 2 or 3 times a week, then great. If you can do it 4 or 5 times a week, even better. You know, this is something that should be into your daily routine as much as possible. And again, it could be something you bring in, as we discussed with mindset. I'm going to do a daily mobility thing. It's only going to be 10 minutes worth of work. I might do 2 or 3 stretches on the hips, on the shoulders, and that's it. And that's what I'm going to do. I'm just going to try and do that 4 or 5 times a week. And then I'm going to see if I can do that for a long time and then build from there. You know, and that's it. That's a simple change you can make, and that will fix those 2 things, okay? So what are sort of standards we want to look at in terms of movement? The most important thing that we look at here in UP Performance is that you can obviously do pushing, pulling and squatting and moving. You know, those 4 things are going to be from there, okay? We've got the rotations in there and everything else as well, but generally speaking, that's what you want to make sure you can do. So, full squats, we've discussed it. I've created a squat video. If you go back in the Movement Mondays, there is a series of different things, but starting with the body weight squat and building you up to barbell squats and utilizing weight. Okay, so it literally takes you through each stage from there. From finding what is your sort of perfect stance, wall squats, sitting back onto a seat like a box squat without any weight, goblet squats, building up to, let's say, front, back, overhead barbell squats. Okay, so you've got pretty much everything in there. And the idea there really is that you want to make sure that the crease of your hip, when you're in that full squat position, and again, I can put my leg up on this table, but that's cool. As you can see from there, this would be a really good sort of squatting position. So I'm getting down, my hips, the crease of my hip is going just below my sort of knee from there, okay? It's all right if it's a little higher, if it's literally down like dead straight, like 90 degrees, that's fine. But you want to just try and get into that position where you can go a little deeper if you can, okay? That was always going to be good for that full range of motion on the hip. So that has to be a full squat, okay? Without losing the upper body, okay? Without rounding around at the top, without anything else like that, keeping a nice upright position, squatting down is what you want to look for, okay? So full squats, toe touches. So you won't be able to see this from here, but if I bend down and reach down, you should be able to at least get close to, if not touch the toes or touch the floor, okay? If you can't, then just again, that's another thing you can just practice doing, okay? It's just something that will show that you have that required hamstring mobility, you know, sort of flexibility from there, reaching down. Again, we use a hamstring stretch, which I've done on my Movement Mondays. I'll show you a nice hamstring stretch to do in the mornings or as a little mobility thing. And again, that's the toe touch is what we use as a nice little tester, just to make sure that we're increasing that mobility within that area, within those joints, okay? So that's another standard that you really want to be trying to reach to. That's a good one. And then I was talking about reaching, it's obviously reaching overhead, okay? So anything which obviously is going to be done overhead requires that full range of motion. Now this roof is quite low, so I'm actually going to punch through the ceiling if I go fully overhead. But if I go down a little bit and sort of squat down a bit, what you should be able to see is that I can reach overhead from there. If I go to the side, again, it's reaching from there. It's not arching too much on the lower back. That's what you don't want to try and, you want to see people doing. When the butt sticks out and they sort of try and reach overhead like so, and put themselves in awkward angles, you should just be able to reach up into the sky overhead, keeping the arm pretty close to the head from there, and it should be no pain and very restricted or lack of restricted movement from there, okay? So those 3, if you can do those 3 quite happily without any pain, without any major restriction, you should be able to do most endeavours, most work from there. And then if you're activating those muscles and you're doing most of your mobility, then guess what? You'll be able to move better, you'll be in less pain, and everything will work from there. Okay, guys, so that is this week's second layer. Hopefully you've taken something from that. If there's any questions you've got, then please email me, please message me on Facebook, do anything that's going to get in contact with me. You know, share, repeat, talk about it. If you have any questions, I will see you guys next week for Movement Monday, where we'll continue the awesome. You guys have a great weekend. Just be awesome, guys. I'll catch you later.